Good morning or good afternoon, wherever
Morning.
you may be.
Good
We're
afternoon, yes.
one less for the time being because we have a slight technical issue using hotel Wi-Fi down here in Florida. So Marc's going to be joining us when he has that all figured out. But rather than making the world wait on Marc, which I'm sure he's used to, we wanted to get things rolling. So welcome to Business on the Block, episode 73. I am Mike, your ops guy, and I am joined by another lovely co-host, Michelle Peterson-Clark. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Mike. I'm excellent.
You think we can survive without Marc? I think we're going to be all right.
Yeah. I think we can do it. You know, you and I have been running our own businesses for quite some time. We can run a podcast for 10 minutes until he turns up, I'm sure.
We'll be good to go. So today we're going to be talking about how Google and ETH have, I guess, sort of teamed up. Google is shaking up the digital payment space with Ethereum integration. So I guess the question is, has Web3 officially arrived? We'll also be talking about Starbucks and how they're filtering out their CMO. This seems to be a trend across a few different major companies over the last few months. So is this sort of a trend on what we expect some of these bigger giants to start doing? Is this an AI integration replacement? We'll discuss that a little bit. And then the SEC versus Ethereum. So the SEC wants to classify Ethereum as a security. We've discussed this on several different occasions on the show. We will reopen that package and really dissect what Ethereum is, how the SEC is viewing it, how they may be right or wrong, and debate it. So first and foremost, let's pop into story number one. All right, so Google now showing Ethereum as showing the Ethereum balances when you type in somebody's ETH address. So for those who don't know, an ENS address is something that it's sort of like a screen name for your digital wallet. And what that does is it allows, payment processing to go a little bit more smooth. So rather than, paying out a wallet address with a string of, 50 or 60 random characters, you can pay youropsguy.eth, for example, which, anybody looking to pay for that, you can. So so the ENS names, it's essentially a domain name in theory, and it's linked directly to your digital wallet, and that becomes your identifier within the blockchain mainframe. So Google is now tapping into Etherscan, which is basically it's the transparent prism that looks into the Ethereum network, the Ethereum blockchain, and it pulls out any on-chain activity associated with that particular digital wallet. So now Google is able to tap in and provide that as a search result, similar to if you search for like a store and you saw opening hours and when, what their phone number is, like it provides that basic information from the original search result. So what does this mean? Is Google officially tapping into Ethereum? Michelle, what are your thoughts?
Well, of course, the first thing I did was I got one of my wallet addresses and I pasted it into Google with nothing else. All I did was put the wallet address in, pressed enter, and it gave me the currencies. So I had in that particular wallet, I had Ethereum and I've got Optimism as well. I use that wallet for my history newsletters that I put on Mirror and Paragraph, and they use different blockchains. Unfortunately, there was, not as much money as I would like there to be in there when you randomly search your wallet, hoping that there'll be a couple of million Bitcoin, or Ethereum tokens, but there wasn't. But, I think that I really like it. I think that it is an easy way for people, once they have wallet addresses, to be able to see what it is they've got. It's it's a first step, isn't it, in the direction of it actually becoming a bit more mainstream than having to go to Etherscan and working out where you put the address in and what it says when it gives it back to you. Because, in the early days, let's say 3 years or so ago, that wasn't as simple as it might have sounded. So to be able to do this now, I think, is a fantastic thing. And it's just another step, as we've been talking about for weeks and weeks, months and months, in fact, of moving towards a much more mainstream onboarding process for the mums and dads that are out there.
So obviously, whenever you hear the word Google, you start thinking to yourself, okay, what's the ulterior motive? It's not necessarily to provide the data and search results upon request. Anybody that is not familiar with Etherscan and they're playing in the Web3 space, I would argue very amateur at the beginning stages, because that is your search engine for any on-chain activity. Now you're incorporating a data mining search engine. What information are they harnessing through their data analytics and their algorithm by, I guess, tapping into that network? Are they going to be able to identify which ENS names are the most searched? Will there be advertising opportunities for people based around their ENS name? Is their domain name now marketable because it becomes a searchable item within the Google mainframe? All of this is data collection that, again, people can easily tap into, repurpose, and then retarget individuals in order to get more eyes on it. I think from a transparency perspective, we're going to start seeing, different organizations, whether it's charities, potentially government agencies that are going to move to any on-chain activity. This can potentially be a transparent viewport for the average user in seeing where certain funds are allocated. But again, when it comes to anything Google, I really feel that there's a problem that we have to address. And we have to be very skeptical about whatever they get their hands on.
So your idea of the whole time we've been talking probably is that this is the thin end of the wedge of Google getting their greedy little mitts into it.
Yeah, and I think that, again, maybe it's a little early for conspiracy corner, but I don't think Google does things because they're nice guys. Right. So if they're going to be providing this information, there's clearly an alternative that they have behind it. Now, what data can they provide to organizations, perhaps on Wall Street or BlackRock, that shows how much search, is actually going into certain elements within ENS names, and, how many different results are cropping up based around the interest of people exploring other wallets? Who knows really where this goes? I think that if they missed the train or they blew up the train in the AI world, there is still hope within blockchain. So if they can somehow become a different alternative to something like Etherscan that provides a different user experience, because Etherscan, again, is nothing more than a projection of the activity that's on chain.
Yes, that's correct.
It's nothing more than a projection of internet activity and articles and different pieces around the web. So if they can bridge some of those tools, maybe the user experience and the onboarding process within Web3 becomes a little easier. That's a good that can come out of it.
Yeah, and maybe if we think about our story last week about Apple and Google. So if we look at that story, we look at this one, there's a pattern emerging, isn't there? And so, if we think about, our prediction is that there'll be a wallet on iPhones, if not this September, then definitely by next September. If we look at that, if we look at what Google are doing, in terms of AI stuff as well, and now if we look at this, there's a bit of a line. Lines can be drawn to connect all of these different things, and obviously our idea about that is that it means that they're looking at, or they're moving towards the blockchain Web3 environment.
So does it stop at Ethereum is the question? do other blockchains start creating their own ENS or similar ENS domain structures that people can tap into?
Well, I mean, it's not just Ethereum, because it's the level two, it's the L2 chains from it as well, because it showed the optimism money I had as well on that particular wallet. So, that means that's actually, I don't know how many L2 chains are there now. There's a ton. So if you had a wallet that had 50 different chains on it, then it would all be listed on that, wouldn't it? So in that case, they're covering a fairly large chunk of the blockchain market currently, aren't they?
Well, Ethereum, the same wallet address is applicable on the layer twos, right? That's what makes the Ethereum network so dangerous and so powerful compared to everything else. But I'm talking about other platforms, the Solana, for example. Like Solana is a completely different network. Does Sol start implementing ENS systems that are now searchable through these search engines as well? Is Google the answer to consolidate some of these things and really migrate some of the data into one location to figure out any on-chain activity? I mean, I think we're a little too far down the rabbit hole based around the surface of this particular story, but again, it's all things to really keep an eye on here.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I say, watch this space. I think that this is just the beginning of this type of thing. And to your point, I think that the other chains and other, Solana and those sorts of ones, I think that they will start doing this, because let's face it, Google have been leaders in different things. There's plenty of things that they've started doing that then other businesses, other companies, other processes have gone, oh, Google are doing that, we can do this, but this is how we'll do it our way. And I think that that's something that we can watch and wait and see on for that.
Yeah, and again, this speaks volume to the transparency that blockchain provides, but it also, with Google's attachment to this now, it might reduce some of the anonymous components that users liked about Web3. So it's a double-edged sword, damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario. And again, if life is made easier, typically there's a trade-off. And that trade-off is usually data when it comes to Google. So we just got to keep our eyes on that one.
Yeah. I just want to say,
so
shout
moving
out.
us into...
Can I just say one thing? Just shout out very quickly to the Bolt chat is running hot today. There's lots of comments.
Every time I mention Google, I get cut off.
Yeah, you do. They hate you. I
know.
Sorry,
go ahead with the comments.
The Bolt chat there's so many comments in there, but because there's only two of us, it's getting a little bit difficult to read them all quickly and respond. But guys, we are reading it. So we will come back to talking about some of that stuff, and we'll comment when we can. But yeah, so shout out to Bolt Nation for being in there today. It's fantastic. We love to see you guys and love chatting with you throughout the show.
You guys are always blowing up that chat. Really appreciate it, and always happy you got to have you guys join us here. Okay, so we're gonna pop into story number 2 here. All right, so Starbucks has decided that they're going to start phasing out. I'm going to reject cookies. They're going to start phasing out their CMO role. Now, chief marketing officers have really had a lot more tools at their disposal since the integration of not only blockchain, but AI. And you would think that, all right, we need somebody to head this up. But the counter has really been proven, because some of these technologies, I don't want to use the term replacement, but they're realizing that, different markets require different marketing strategies. So why put an umbrella over the marketing approach when you can really customize things and tailor different areas based around marketing needs in your particular target audience? So I think what Starbucks is doing here is they're just going to stick with regional managers, regional marketing officers, rather than having it at the corporate level. What this does for compliance or any sort of liability, I have no idea. It's yet to be seen. But I guess it begs the question, with all this emerging technology and different attributes of what's being offered with AI and blockchain, and we know Starbucks has dipped their toe pretty hard in the blockchain world successfully. So this kind of comes at a little bit of a surprise to me anyway. But what are your thoughts? I mean, is this the end of the CMO role, or is this just, Starbucks kind of doing their thing?
Well, I think that we could actually probably have a whole show where I could just talk ad nauseum about the benefits or otherwise of having a CMO or a VP of marketing in your business, because there's lots of businesses that don't have them. And those that do generally tend to be more successful. So regards to this particular thing, well, the CMO in this case has been promoted to a CEO. So he's been in the role, I think, for about 4.5 years. So he's been there a long time, knows the business really well. Now, because he's been appointed CEO, he's got an idea about segmenting in by global regions to have, whether they have a vice president of marketing or heads of marketing within particular regions. And so in this particular case, I think it is a new CMO coming in with their ideas and all of that sort of thing. And that's probably what in this particular case is going on. Now, there have been some higher profile companies over the last 12 months or so have gotten rid of their CMO roles. Things like I think it's Uber and
Etsy, UPS, Walgreens.
UPS. McDonald's also got rid of their CEO, and less than 12 months later, they hired someone in the role. When we have a look at whether or not companies actually are eliminating the CMO role or not, 71% of Fortune 500 companies still have a CMO position. So that's a reasonable indicator of whether or not that position is needed. 15 years ago, it was 74%. So over a 15-year period, the decline has only been 3%. I don't see that as very much at all. I think one of the problems we've got right now is that CEOs look at marketing as a cost center. So marketing costs us money. Marketing doesn't make us money. If marketing and the sales or the revenue teams work much more together, then you can actually do marketing that will bring in dollars into your business rather than looking at it as a drain on the businesses. And I think that that's really where it needs to be turned so that you can think that.
I want to comment on that, but back from his coffee break, which took almost he just disappeared again. Anyway, I was about to see if Marc could join us, but apparently the coffee started working quicker. The CEO is not wrong in that mentality, and maybe that's just the way that I operate as an operations guy. Like, I look at the black and white numbers of things, right? Marketing costs money. There's an acquired cost per acquisition that you have to factor in based around when that user can convert in whatever that process is, whether it's joining the Starbucks Odyssey program or just simply buying a cup of coffee. But I would look at it as a cost incentive as well, which is why things like NFTs, for example, are such a promising component, because there is a direct line of revenue and return on that investment from the marketing side. It's a marketing tool that leads to revenue generating effects. So where does the CMO role fit in all of this? I mean, again, when you're talking about a company of this size and you're talking about C-level executives, there's a couple primary purposes behind that. It's not necessarily to run the company. It's basically just to explain to shareholders and, compliance officers, whether they're on the board or whether they're third party they're just there to explain what the next steps are within their marketing process or whatever that C-level, role looks like. So the CEO's role of identifying cost centers and how that doesn't or does translate into revenue, that is a responsibility that he has to portray to the board of directors of a company like this, especially a publicly traded company. He has to provide that to shareholders as well. So again, it's more of a glorified, I'll use the term political position within the corporation. Shaking hands, kissing babies, just explaining the good that really comes, and if there's a hiccup, explaining what the pivot is in order to kind of navigate away from that particular negative talking point or whatever the situation may be. So getting back to this scenario, integrating the CMO role as the new CEO, what does this do for their Odyssey program? They obviously have success with it. They figured out a way to make it work. They figured out a way to avoid all of the negative lingo with NFTs and all that other stuff. They call them stamps. They call them all these different things. Like, he officially, or his team, did their job as far as marketing the product correctly. Yep. Now he's in the CEO role, where he officially has that understanding of a cost center, but he understands the revenue side as well. What does this do for a company like Starbucks when it relates to anything on chain as we move forward here?
Yeah. So like Fortune 250 companies, only 10% of the CEOs have marketing experience. 4% of them have previously been CMOs. So it is not generally a path that one takes to the top level of the C-suite by being the CMO. However, you get some CMOs that get it. So Marketer of the Year, CMO of the Year in the UK for 2023 is the CMO of Boots, which is a chemist, like a pharmacy type organization, but they sell all sorts of things. You can go and buy a drink and a sandwich at lunchtime when you pick up your paracetamol or whatever, right? And makeup, and so they have all that sort of stuff. Their particular campaigns that they did with their loyalty program, for every £1 they spend, they get £2.50 back in return for the people that sign up to their Advantage Club. So, you've got CMOs that are very strategic about improving the bottom line of their company, revenue earning, and creating a community, which in turn, as we know, when you can get customers that you already have to spend much more money than it costs to actually get a new customer. The acquisition costs are very high for new customers. So getting people that are loyal to your brand, increasing their spending with your brand, is a far easier sell. And that's what this guy has been doing since he was poached from another company because he was such a great CMO. So, in general, CMO positions, people are in them for 4.5, 5 years on average. So it means that it is something that people go into and they develop. Now, obviously, some people aren't very good at that, but in lots of cases, if you are looking at the bottom line in the company, so how can we make marketing a revenue generating center in the business, not just a cost center? And then that's kind of spread out over the business. That's how we keep the CMO position, or at least a vice president of marketing position, important within an organization.
Well, I think one of and you mentioned the timeline on how long they usually stay within the organization. I think there's such a dynamic shift in target marketing and audience interests that they almost have to bounce around from company to company to bring fresh ideas, because if they get caught down the same old marketing approach, they're going to fade out very quickly due to people's lack of interest, or I guess creativity, when it comes to creating new marketing campaigns. But I'm with you. I think that a marketing division should have a sole focus of not only brand awareness, which costs money, but should have direct lines of revenue that you can account for, that you can add into your pro formas and your projections. And that's really, again, bringing it back to an old school mentality that we've been discussing here for 72 episodes now. NFTs are an answer to that. Whatever you decide to call that, they are a revenue generating marketing tool with other benefits as well. And maybe it takes a guy like this who has that type of experience at bringing that to the CEO level, to not only work with where Starbucks is, but and improve the model, like continue that model down the path, but also shed light to other companies and potential CMOs or CEOs that want to replicate that type of behavior. and provide that same line item and pro forma projection to their bottom line as well.
I mean, and the other thing too, I think, is when people think, well, what does the CMO do? They're not the people building your funnels and writing your copy for your website. That's not what they do. They do the strategy stuff. They do the big picture thinking. They run a team. And if they're not doing that, then they shouldn't actually be called, they probably shouldn't be at the CMO level. They need to be at the vice president marketing or head of marketing or something like that. So, I think it's important to understand that I don't think that the CMO role is exiting stage left, with 71% of Fortune 500 companies still having one. But I think that if you're a small business or a new business, while marketing is vital and important, making sure that you have someone that has a handle on the direction of the long-term thinking, but also is able to do some of the nuts and bolts stuff with whatever staff you have.
I'll tell you what, it's if the position does end up getting phased out, there's going to be a lot of pissed off college kids who spent their career trying to, study marketing that now don't have a ceiling anymore. But I mean, without going into too much, I guess projection, like was the decision to remove the CMO position his, or did it come in his absence and elevation to the CEO? Like, was that his first gig as the CEO, was to eliminate the CMO role?
Well, I think I would imagine, given he's gone from CMO to CEO, that he's gone, yeah, we won't replace me there. I've got a different idea. Because who would be the person that would eliminate that role if not him when he's in charge? Like, the board's not really necessarily getting into that. Like, if a CEO came in and said, I definitely want a CMO, the board's not going to go, no, get rid of that person. However, that said, when companies are hurting financially, the trend is that CMO position's the first to go, because a CEO, a CFO, which is the finance person, and a chief operating officer, COO, tend to be the three staple positions, don't they? And it's easy for them to go, well, yeah, so we can save $300K a year by getting rid of the CMO. Yeah, let's do that, without actually thinking of what the implications are, because they're just looking at cost cutting.
Well, in the restructuring process of any company, everything starts internal, right? You think of marketing as an external strategy. So, you need to solidify the core internally in order to project yourself out as a strong company through marketing endeavors. So I understand that side of it. I just find it interesting that if he is the one that eliminated the position, did it really show how useless the position was when he had it? Or is he that egotistical that he's like, nobody can replace what I've done with Odyssey?
I think that he probably thinks, as CEO, I've got a handle on this marketing gig. I'm still going to have my fingers in the pie of marketing. Therefore, we won't have a CMO. I'll have these 5 others, I think it is, regional people reporting to me, and I'll still keep my fingers on the marketing stuff. That's what I think is going on.
I mean, look, I mentioned this at the beginning of the segment. I think it's a good idea. I don't think people in the West Coast have the same targeted audience. Sorry.
I wonder if I'm the only one left. What happens if you leave, Mike? Oh, that's a problem. I don't have control of this stream.
No, I'm here. The conspiracies of me mentioning Google always shuts me down. But as I mentioned at the beginning of the segment, I'm not against the idea, because I feel that, people in the West Coast or in different countries, for example, they have different marketing needs and marketing tendencies. So why have all of those individuals be subjected to a higher C-level authority figure when they can run their own marketing campaigns themselves? Obviously, there'll be leash, and the CFO and COO will be able to, keep an eye on the way that money is spent and operations are conducted. But I think for the most part, I'm not against the idea. So I mean, I see the Bolt chat going crazy. Any good points that you can see quickly before we move into the next segment here?
So the basis of the comment is really talking about marketing and where does it fit, where does it sit. Spanner made a really good point that once you have a business that's really quite successful, like Starbucks, maybe they need marketers, but maybe they don't need a CMO position person because they're doing so well anyway. So that's, that is a valid point to think about. I think that ultimately, if you want to get to something like, ultimate unicorn status, maybe that someone who has that broad strategy thinking and comes up with the bright ideas, you would probably want to have someone in that position. But, I think that's a reasonably valid point.
My pushback to that, I have a very, my pushback to that is you find me one company that's like, no, we have enough customers.
True. Yeah, that's
there's no
true.
ceiling with any of that, right? So you're not gonna handcuff yourself under those circumstances. But again, if there's a trade-off of saving $380,000 a year and all the liabilities that potentially don't come with that, I mean, great.
Yeah.
So be it.
Yeah. And Jamal said that he thinks that Web3 has a big role to play in getting nailing a return on investment, an ROI for marketing. In companies. So, and obviously there is no argument from either of us about that because we think that too.
And guess what? Now it's searchable. You can now search out these different components and, Google gets their hands on it. Maybe they become the new CMO for everybody. Who knows? All right. So speaking of the next phase here, we're going to go back to Ethereum, but we're going to pop into our conspiracy corner.
Oh, where's your hat?
It's here. I'm pushing two buttons at the same time.
Too much.
All right. So the SEC versus Ethereum, the never-ending battle. The SEC is now claiming, and I guess they have for a while, that Ethereum, which I guess is just they're confirmed they're using the blockchain as what they're classifying as Ethereum. It is a security, so the entire blockchain is a security, which makes no sense. But we'll let the SEC play around with different components and terminologies the way that they feel. We have covered this time and time again, mostly in our comparisons between Ethereum and Bitcoin. But I guess if you throw the SEC into the mix now, they have a very specific category of companies that are securities and companies that are not securities. And they like to classify companies one or the other. Unfortunately, as we've discussed here, Ethereum is not the same as your traditional stock. It could be. And I think that is the message that the SEC really needs to start understanding. Different elements that are built on the Ethereum network could be something. And if they are something that falls in the line of a security, then they should be subjected to those laws. But if they do not fall under it, but they are using the Ethereum network, they should not be subject to those laws. So I guess the conspiracy component comes in. Is this the SEC's attempt in keeping Ethereum at bay because there's much more activity you can do with it compared to something like Bitcoin? And is this a way for them to control the Wall Street futures market, which they've already started setting the stage for approvals and being able to trade futures on? So what are your thoughts about the SEC getting their dirty little mitts on our little Ethereum network here?
All of the above. Look, we have spent many a time, haven't we, talking about the fact that Wall Street want to get their, bang for their buck. They want to be in on any way in which they can make money from this sector. And the SEC, frankly, in this particular instance, are helping them be able to do that, except the problem they've got right now is they're losing cases that they try. So they lost their case against XRP, as we know. They've been trying to do various things with other applications and stuff that just go nowhere. And so I think that they're scrounging around for it's kind of like that thing where when you've got a business idea, if you throw 10 things against a wall, you hope that one of them sticks and the other 9 might fall off, but the 10th one sticks, and that's the idea you go with. It kind of feels a little bit like this to me. They're going, yeah, here, and then they're going, oh, maybe this is the one, maybe this is the one. And like, it's just, I don't know. I mean, I wish Marc was here because he definitely has some big ideas about this sort of stuff.
Yeah, the SEC shut him down today. I guess, and Jamal brought up a point. He says he doesn't see the relevance of the SEC's involvement in this scenario unless the instrument is used as a security. And that's basically the way I led in with the conversation. But if you look a little bit into the article, it does mention that, a lot of this stuff started to surface once Ethereum switched to a proof of stake model back in 2022. And within the proof of stake model, you are essentially securing Ethereum in an effort to engage with different validations on the blockchain, right? So it's almost a store of value that you're providing back to the Ethereum network, sort of as a proof in your staked ETH that you are capable of handling the validations and the transactions. So when you're storing that wealth, we'll call it, or that asset, that potentially could open the door for different security elements. Now, I have a very important question because we all know that, especially here in the States, the left hand of the government never knows what the right hand is doing, and vice versa. So if the SEC is successful in classifying this as a security, when does that asset / security officially become a realized gain? And therefore, how is it taxable through the IRS, right? Like, these are important elements that they have no clue what direction they're running in. They are, again, they're shoveling shit against the wall and seeing what is going to stick to it. And frankly, they're so used to doing things that the way that they have no clue what this technology is capable of, and therefore they don't know how to classify it without implementing new legislation. And the only way to do that is to sort of try to hitch its wagon to something that already exists. Now, again, I am not against the SEC enforcing securities laws for people that are out there raising capital using NFTs. They are using NFTs as an ownership stake within a specific entity. Yep. And again, that's where the proof of stake model sort of popped its head about as far as a security. But to classify everything underneath that is being built on the Ethereum network under that same umbrella, that's not going to hold up. And frankly, that's not accurate.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, like, ultimately, we've talked before, haven't we, about the fact that are we on year 3 now where the US have been trying to do some sort of laws or, make some point of, classifying what cryptocurrencies are and blockchain is and all of that stuff. And they've got basically nowhere in that whole time. And so
the only place they've gone is their hand deeper in the cookie jar. And they don't know why, they don't know how, but people do not want to spend the money to go to war with them. Why? Because they feel that in this global marketplace that blockchain is, they're not subjected to staying here to fight it. It makes no sense. Yeah. They can go to our friends in, Abu Dhabi or Singapore or set up shop somewhere else that have much more lenient regulations.
Yeah. And look what happened in the Binance case. I guess they've been excited about the fact that in the Binance case, they got a win and, whatever. But effectively, what's happening is that Binance are exiting the US. So, is that a win? Like, I don't know. I'm not sure that they knew at the outset what a win looked like. And, they got the fine. Okay, CZ's in trouble. Okay. But at the end of the day, Binance are leaving the country, and all of that activity, all of that money is now going somewhere else. It's not in the US anymore.
Yes. And what does that do for the Binance bottom line? I'm sure it's going to be a heavy impact. But again, I've separated these two different things on the show many times in the past, and I think it's worth mentioning here again. Binance is an exchange. right? That is a direct bridge between fiat and this crypto digital world. Ethereum is a blockchain, right? You're not connecting Ethereum to your bank account and extracting fiat cash and transferring it into that type of currency. So again, where the SEC comes into this, I mean, theoretically, I can trade a bag of apples for ownership in my company. Does that make the apples a security? I guess it sort of does. But if I were to give people a bag of apples and say, eat it, that doesn't make it a security, right? Because you can do whatever you want with it. So I guess it's a stupid example, but it does lead into sort of a part B of this particular topic. BlackRock, which we all know is the devil on Wall Street, they're seeing only a little bit of demand for Ethereum from their clients since the SEC has approved the futures. Now, do these stories relate? Is the SEC going after Ethereum as a security, creating that hesitation and that lack of demand for BlackRock's clients to potentially invest into Ethereum? Or is it, I guess, the uneducated component of people needing to try to of people trying to understand Ethereum as the same as Bitcoin and not understanding the value of what Ethereum provides that's different? So I mean, I'd love to have your take on it. My argument is it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. The other really interesting thing about the BlackRock story is that even though they're saying there hasn't been much uptake and, they're doing this, they're doing that, at the end of the article, it talks about how frustrated they are with how difficult it is to get exposure to crypto assets. Like, like that's part of the point, isn't it, of having a decentralized finance system like this, having an alternative to the current financial monetary system that we have. That's in the entire point of why we support it, why it was created, and why they're having trouble with it, which I think is really quite interesting.
Well, I can hear Marc yelling from his hotel room right now as he's watching us on one of the various streaming platforms like Bolt. It's not about anything other than control. I mean, if BlackRock or Wall Street can control the system, or at least provide the illusion that they control the system, that's where they're going to make their money and run with it. And again, this is no different from somebody that's placating, the AI words and just, formulating it out as just, I guess, an alternative name to an algorithm. Right. I mean, it's the same concept of just leveraging the buzzword in order to make sure that you're still on top of the game with the new technologies and emerging trends that are out there. Now, does BlackRock talk to the SEC about this? And, does one know, like, behind closed doors what the other is doing? 100%. You don't manage that much assets in the company like BlackRock without the SEC having an inside seat on a lot of those conversations, and vice versa. Whatever SEC is planning on going after, BlackRock definitely has a little bit of a heads up on, whether that's legal or not. I mean, I'm not here to say, but this is Conspiracy Corner, so I'm sticking with my conspiracy. So where do you see this end up? I mean, like, does BlackRock really manage and control the narrative, or are they going to sit back and just say, hey, we're going to let the SEC do their thing, and we're going to provide advice to our clients on whether Bitcoin or Ethereum is the better investment at that moment?
I think that they, in what they've said in this article, if assuming what's being written is true, so there's that point too. So I think that what they're saying in this article is pretty short-sighted to me. Like they talk about the long tail, and that really is what this is on about. When in 5 years' time, when everybody is using blockchain, Web3, where cryptocurrencies and using them, different chains for different purposes, like we've talked about, Polygon, the loyalty chain, etc. When everybody's doing that, they'll all be jumping on the bandwagon then. Now, some of those that started now, if they keep with the strategy, are going to be much better placed and in a better position. But for them to kind of say, oh, well, we've tried it once now, the uptake isn't as much as we like, that's only because a small percentage of the market right now know about it. Bitcoin is the bride. Ethereum's kind of like the bridesmaid, so until people start taking their focus off the bride and looking at the bridesmaid, then it's not going to be as big. And so I think that, ultimately they're going to have to be patient. And I guess in the money finance current system, patience isn't one of the virtues they have, is it?
No, and I think it's going to take people to realize it, and it will hit them hard. I mean, I like the Coke and Pepsi analogy a little bit better when you're talking about Bitcoin and Ethereum. Bitcoin is very static. Coke is very static, right? You know what you're getting with Coke. Pepsi, however, has all the snacks and the chips, and they have all the different components that are associated underneath the umbrella of Pepsi, similar to Ethereum. You have all these loyalty rewards, and you have all these different components that you can play around with. But I think all of these articles today really kind of they sort of come around full circle with this, because with the discoverability approach that perhaps Google is going to be providing to the Ethereum network, that's going to create more educational pieces about people getting involved. We're still sitting on the soapbox about hardware integration and digital wallets. All of these components coming into the mix here, it's only going to encourage more and more people to jump within the Ethereum network, whether it's to participate in some of the loyalty and reward programs or even build projects on their own. There's a lot of no-code solutions that are emerging and have emerged very fast, especially with the advancements of AI, that allows people in their small businesses to create, tokenized incentives for their clients or even their business development partners.
Yeah.
So,
agreed.
All right, moving us into story number or 5. I don't know where we're at.
It isn't really number 3. It's number 5.
Number 5. So we don't necessarily have an article that's not behind a paywall with this one, but I think it's an important one because it kind of fluffs in some of the marketing talk that we've discussed. So there's a small Caribbean island that is currently making an absolute fortune from artificial intelligence. And they didn't really do anything other than, sort of being in the right place, right time, right name. So it's the tiny island, and I hope I'm saying this right, of Anguilla, and now it's making a fortune because their country slug in their domains on their URLs are .ai. So like the .com is the United States, .nz is New Zealand, .cn is Canada, .mx is Mexico. They're .ai, and they're sort of piggybacking off of that marketing effect, and it's really allowing companies to start recognizing that, hey, this little tiny island exists, and maybe there's an opportunity to maybe make a portal of AI industry here. Is it a fluke? Is it just pure luck? Do they have the resources to even capitalize on it? Or does this disappear into, I'll say, the ether, even though it's not Ethereum?
Well, I love this story, and I have found an article that's not paywalled, and that's the one I'm putting in. So people can have a look at that. Look, I think that this is, there's so much bad news out there. This is a feel-good, fantastic story because this small island in the Caribbean is just making so much money out of this after 4 decades of having .ai as their country code from the domain things. They've got something like, I think it's like, let me have a look. Their entire GDP is 275 million, whatever their dollars are. Let's say 300 million US dollars. And their registrations so far are up to like 78 million. So it's such a huge proportion now of their overall GDP for this particular country. And the thing I really, really love about it is that 70% of the money so far has gone into improving healthcare for all the people on the island. So like that kind of stuff for me is a fantastic community thing. Longer term, they're going to have to come up with some things. Obviously, they thought that their healthcare wasn't very good. They're improving that. And obviously, maintenance of a system like that over the years won't be as much as initial investment and stuff like that. But I think that ultimately, they'll probably have to buy in some help. Perhaps you might contact them, Mike, so that you can assist them with how they can better strategize for all the money that they're making off of all the AI domains.
Well, I would think that they would put a little bit of investment in encouraging infrastructure. And, I would own that so fast. Like, let us be the AI hub. We are .ai. Like, build an entire Caribbean infrastructure and tech powerhouse right out of the Caribbean. Obviously, you'll need resources and things, but I'm confident that with all the money that's pouring into the AI industry, somebody might buy the country for all we know. But then, where does it all end up after that? Who knows? But I think that if they're putting all that money towards the medical industry and really helping out their citizens, I really hope that those transactions are on chain so we can validate them.
In the Bolt chat, Arif asked about who owns the .io domain. So I looked it up. It's British Indian Ocean Territory. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I don't think that they're a huge country or an area. So and
I guess .xyz is an interplanetary system. In probably some star.
Perhaps Elon has that for Starlink and we don't know about it. That's how he's funding all of the rockets and stuff like that.
I guess. I mean, and tip of the cap to him. He's still doing his thing. All right. So, we're going to wrap up a little bit early today. Sorry about the technical issues. You can yell at Marc next week. Hopefully he'll be in a spot with decent enough internet to be able to join us. Any final comments? I know we covered a lot today that really sort of overlapped with some of these stories. I think it was a really, really good topic discussion, especially with Google really getting their mitts on it. But what are your final thoughts? Where do we end up with Ethereum, the SEC, and Google sort of like intertwining here?
Well, I think that we've got. Oh, you've taken your conspiracy hat off. I should take mine off too. But I think that there is much more to come with the three of those and what's happening with regards to the blockchain space. But I guess my final thought would be as a marketer for the pitch for the CMO position and what it can actually do for your business if you actually do have someone that thinks strategically about your marketing and helps with the implementation with the mindset of it being revenue positive, not negative on the business.
I agree. And in the meantime, I started looking up real estate in Anguilla. So you get a beautiful beachfront property for $600,000 US right now. So we'll see if that trend continues and if their property values go up. And, we found a couple Web3 hubs around the world. Maybe this becomes the AI hub. But for now, we're going to sign off. Business on the Block every Wednesday at 9:30 Eastern in the morning. And I guess normal time around the world.
Next week we will be back to 2:30 p.m. UTC +1 because the UK goes on to daylight time on Sunday. So back to our normal time in the UK as well.
Normal time. All right. Well, you guys will get the notice through Bolt anyway. So make sure you go to Bolt Plus and Bolt Nation and sign up your accounts there. Watch us live every Wednesday. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure with the chat going nuts and Bolt. So thank you guys. And we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.